I fully expected to cook these ribs today, but let's see what the wife can do. Today, we're swapping roles.
So first I'm gonna start off by trimming these. This is gonna be a backyard trim, so nothing too fancy, but I do still like to give these a nice shape so they cook evenly, or at least that's what Alonzo does, so that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna go over here to where it is thinner, and I'm gonna cut off a couple of these bones just to square this up.
So obviously I don't think you expected me to call you out and ask you to cook the ribs today. What do you think about that?
Really, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I've watched you do ribs so many times that, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable, I would think, doing it. So I'm not really too worried about it. Now, if this was like brisket, I'd be, not that I can't cook brisket, but it's just, brisket's a little intimidating to anybody. So I'm not worried about these ribs. Now I am going to, actually I'm gonna remove some of this before I take off this membrane. I am also going to remove some of this. This is just hanging over, so there's really no point in keeping that. And that's as much as I'm going to trim, since this is more of a backyard style rib.
Also, just gonna throw this out there. If the camera work is not good today, that's my bad. But like I said, we're definitely switching roles. And I think it's a lot easier to do what I do than it is what Sabrina does, for what it's worth.
Now this rack is much bigger than this one, and I do want these to both cook as evenly as possible, so I'm going to try and make sure that this one is closer to the same width as this. And even a lot of this, if you put your hands through it, I mean, it just feels like nothing. So I definitely want to cut the majority off from this side. And this bone over here is just kind of bugging me, so I want to cut that off. So these are backyard ribs, but I'm going to season them up the same way we do at every single comp. I'm going to start with a layer of that base. And tell you what, it's not easy seasoning in the wind.
And that's because you always yell at me for not seasoning right.
So sure.
It's not though, right?
No, it's not.
I told you. I always tell you that. That's why I don't like preparing outside for competitions. It's hard.
Yeah, it's rough. And today's a very, very windy day too. So I noticed though that the wind is making it go at an angle, so I'm just going to try and work with it. We're going to do a light layer of Southern Belle. And then finally, we're going to go with a layer of Southern Hospitality. So today we're going to cook on the Weber Smoky Mountain, and the Weber Smoky Mountain it runs much like a barrel or a drum smoker, where we have all the coals at the bottom, and we have two great levels. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a water pan today that's going to go on the second level. We're not going to use a deflector plate like we normally do in our drums, but what we're going to do is essentially make two zones. We have our safe zone where the water pan is, and we have our more indirect zone, if you will. And that gives us the opportunity for the fat to drip off of the ribs, hit the coals, and it's going to also create moisture in its own way. So we're going to go almost with a two-zone way of cooking these ribs. And we're going to start these ribs on the side where there's no water pan. And so because you'll see one of these ribs is mostly over the coals, the other one is kind of halfway over each side. So we're going to want to make sure to spin this grate so that these ribs cook evenly. So in competition, we normally don't want to get too much color on these ribs. This is backyard style, so it's not that big of a deal if they do get more color, but I'm just really used to getting a nice red color on these ribs. So we're going to try and check these every 30 minutes and spin the grates. It's been about 30 minutes on these ribs, so we're gonna go ahead and give them a check. Ribs are looking good, but the seasoning has not set yet, but you can see there are these little pockets of blood coming through, so I do want to kind of just dab those with a napkin, because even though these are backyard, I still want them to look good. All right, now we're gonna spin this grate, and we'll be back in another 30 minutes. Another 30 minutes. The color's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and give it another spin. And we're gonna let these go for another 30 minutes. It's been an hour and a half overall on these ribs, so we're gonna go ahead and take a look at them. I think they're pretty much time to wrap. Normally for competition ribs, we'd probably want them a little bit lighter than this, but for backyard, I think the color is looking really nice, so we're gonna go ahead and take them off, and we're gonna start wrapping these up. So to wrap our ribs, we're gonna start with half a stick of butter, place our ribs on top. Before I start adding all these liquids, I'm gonna kind of wrap this up to make a little boat. We're gonna start with some Killer Hogs vinegar sauce. Just gonna do a line over top. A little bit of maple syrup. Oy. By a little, apparently I meant a lot. And some chicken broth. I'm gonna pour in about maybe a third to a half of a cup. And we're gonna go ahead and give this a spin. Close the lid. And we'll go ahead and check back on these in an hour. So we're gonna wrap these up, put them back on, and we'll check them again in another 30 minutes. All right, another 30 minutes has passed. Let's take these off and check them. So we've got some disintegration here on the bones. And I think these feel pretty good. Let's check this other one. Same thing here, we've got some good disintegration on these bones. And as you can see when we're probing these, there's no resistance. So we're gonna go ahead and get some sauce on these and let it set before we slice it up. Now we're gonna go ahead and hit these with a little bit of sauce. Use any sauce you want right now. We have Head Country's Apple Habanero. And I'm just gonna brush this on lightly. Go ahead and slice these up. I'm definitely not as good of a slicer as Alonzo. Let's go ahead and take a bite, see how we did. Right off the bat, I can say that these are definitely different than competition ribs that I've been used to tasting for the past year. But I think they're still pretty good for backyard, but let's see what Alonzo thinks.
I'll tell you what, the whole time Sabrina was cooking, I knew that these were gonna turn out good. They look absolutely incredible. I don't even have to taste them to know that they taste delicious, but I'm going to anyway. Now, like I just said a second ago, I knew these were gonna be absolutely banging. Comes right off the bone. I get a nice clean bite, and I guarantee you I could rip this away if I wanted to. Like Sabrina said, this is different from what we typically cook with the competition, but this is a great backyard recipe that you guys can use any day of the week. The purpose of the video was to see, is Sabrina paying attention when we're cooking ribs or anything for that matter? And of course she is. I knew these were gonna come out good. We just wanted to flip the script, try something different. As always,
We really appreciate you guys tuning into this video. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next one.